Greetings, parasite ecologists. So far, we have covered a number of clades in the phylum Platyhelminthes. Now we get into one of my favorites, the cestodes, otherwise known as the tapeworms. This is an entirely parasitic taxon of Platyhelminthes, and they are structurally really distinct. Remember, we discussed the Turbularia, which are basal flatworms. Not all of them are parasitic. Then we discussed the trematodes and the monogenes, and now we've made it to the cestodes. In terms of their morphology, the cestodes are wildly different from all of the clades that have come before. One of the ways in which the cestodes are different is that they have no mouth and no digestive tract. They take in nutrition by absorbing it across their body wall. If you're confused about how that allows them to live, all will be revealed shortly. The cestodes have complex life cycles like the trematodes, but often more complicated, and the adult cestodes are parasites in vertebrate guts. We often see trophic transmission among the cestodes. This class of flatworms is also very well represented among human parasites. Remember that each year, about 14% of all human deaths globally are due to infectious disease, caused when people are infected by viral, bacterial, protozoal, or metazoan parasites. These diseases mostly affect very poor people. You'll also remember that the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation tallies up the burden of these diseases every year. In the most recent year for which data are available, 2021, here are the burdens for each neglected tropical disease. This is basically a square pie chart showing the proportion of the total global burden due to each cause. Malaria causes the bulk of this suffering, but check out the lower right corner and you'll see a box labeled cysticercosis. That is a tapeworm disease that we will cover later on. In the extreme lower right corner, there is another box too small to get a label, but that one is for Echinococcus, another tapeworm disease that we will cover. This is the basic structure of an adult tapeworm. You'll notice that it tapers from really narrow at one end to much wider at the other. You can immediately see where it gets its name. It really does look like the tape of a tape measure. That narrow end is the head. We call that the scolex. The scolex is a really important attachment structure for these parasites. The scolex is attached to a neck, which is the region where the tapeworm is producing new segments of its own body. And those segments form the long tape that we call a strobila. I'm now going to show you some scolices for a bunch of different species of tapeworms. You can see that they are really varied, but the thing that they all have in common is that they are specifically adapted to adhere to the intestinal epithelium of the definitive host, which is the host of the adult stage of the parasite. There are a number of different structures that help tapeworms hold on to those slippery intestinal walls of their host, even as a never-ending tide of poop threatens to sweep them downstream and out of their host. Acetabula are circular suckers, and there are 4 of them on the cyclophilidian tapeworm parasite shown here. Incidentally, you can also see a crown of hooks on this scolex, and we call that a rostellum. And here's what they look like when they're not stained and smushed on a microscope slide. This is a scanning electron micrograph of another cestode with 4 acetabula. 2 of them won't be visible in this image because they're on the far side of the scolex, facing away from the camera. Bothria are long slits in the scolex, and they're used to suction onto the folds of the intestinal lining of the definitive host. And lastly, the Thridia are these more complex structures, like you see here, that are also used in attachment. Now, the scolex is on the anterior portion, or the head end of this organism, and then the neck is the growth region, just posterior to the scolex. This is an area of really rapid growth. The term that we use for this growth is strobilation, which means the production of new proglottids. Proglottids are the segments of the tapeworm's body. These are hermaphroditic organisms, and each proglottid has its own set of male and female genitalia. To make this image, some parasitologists have stained this particular parasite with celestine blue. This is a special kind of stain that adheres to cells that are undergoing mitosis. And you can see that the neck region is an area where lots and lots of mitosis is taking place because this is where strobilation is happening. So at the neck, we've got strobilation, and the neck is basically producing new proglottids, and each one of those proglottids gets moved down the strobila of the worm as new ones are produced to replace it. A strobila is composed of one or more proglottids. Here, you can see proglottids that are stained pink. In each proglottid, you can pick out some testes, a uterus, 2 ovaries, and a vitellarium. The vitellarium is the structure that produces the yolk and the shell of the eggs that are going to be produced by this proglottid. Then you have a sperm duct and a genital pore. The genital pore is where sperm comes in, and it's also where eggs go out of the proglottid. So each proglottid is its own independent reproductive structure, and if you string thousands of these together, you get one nice, long tapeworm. The proglottids mature as they move down the tapeworm's body. When they're first produced at the neck, they're immature. And when we say immature in parasitology, we always mean not ready to accomplish sexual reproduction and produce sperm or eggs. So their gonads are underdeveloped when they're just produced at the neck. As the proglottids age and move down the strobila of the tapeworm, their gonads mature. And finally, after they've managed to sexually reproduce with another tapeworm laying alongside them, they become gravid and they're ready to produce eggs. As these proglottids continue to move down the body of the tapeworm, they become more and more mature until they reach the very end of the tapeworm when they're ready to go, totally gravid. And once they reach that end, they drop off the strobila to be passed out of the host's digestive tract. In tapeworm life cycles, we'll see a couple different versions, and we do see some of the variations on a theme that we noticed in the trematode life cycles. Tapeworm life cycles in general are more poorly known than trematode life cycles, and they're more variable. But a good rule of thumb is that we often see that if a tapeworm has an aquatic intermediate host, it probably also has an aquatic definitive host. And if it has a terrestrial intermediate host, it probably has a terrestrial definitive host. The tapeworms originally evolved alongside sharks. They were marine parasites when the class Cestoda first branched away from the class Monogenea. And since then, they've radiated into a lot of different habitats, including both freshwater and terrestrial. We're going to talk a lot about the terrestrial tapeworms because human tapeworms are terrestrial, and those are the species whose life cycles we know best. But we know that the tapeworms originally evolved in marine environments, and that's why the vast majority of the tapeworm orders that exist today use sharks as their definitive hosts. I'll see you in the next video.